There we go. So I don't know about you, I think that sounds quite scary. Wouldn't want to be down at that time. But like I said, men and women, all volunteers working across the country in these. So you'd have, generally on each bunker, 12 observers, and they'd rotate, so you'd have 3 down here as a maximum. And if there was a point where a nuclear blast happened, they'd be down here for 3 weeks. So 3 weeks down here would be really intense, be cold, food would be low, water would be low. That was the water they had over there, and that was the jerry cans were always kept on the top because that was what the lead observer, Mr. Bailey himself, would do. And unfortunately, he passed away in 2014, and the plaque is behind you. It's very recent history, like I said, so we're really lucky we can get so much information from people who did this. But the first way they would know of a nuclear blast would be through the bomb power indicator. So this is what connects the baffle plates that we saw above ground, and the shock wave is going to go through those plates, down the blast tube, and that's going to send that needle moving to about 20 kilopascals.
So these were constantly manned, were they? From
not constantly manned, okay. Depending on the threat level, it would change.
Okay.
But we're at the peak of the threat level, like I said, the one below the Cuban Missile Crisis, they'd be doing 48-hour rotational shifts. And actually, when you speak to the observers who were down here, they really enjoyed it. There's a lot of camaraderie, and they're still friends today. They still come up every now and again, which is lovely as well. But aged from 16 to 70, as you can imagine, a 16-year-old down here, closed in 1991, they're, you know, mid-40s, early 50s. My maths isn't that great, so you can do the maths. 30 years on. But it'd be recorded on the bomb power indicator. So that needle's going to go to about 20 kilopascals. There's a button underneath, and you'd press that to reset the gauge, so you could get the instant results again, so you can see it's not an anomaly. And then what you do, you communicate on the teletalk, which we discussed earlier, and speak to the other bunkers nearby to see if they've had the same results, similar results, so they can work out the strength of that bomb. So this is where we are, number 10, Oxford 10 Post. The number's really important, because any bunker ending in a 0 or 5 means it's a lead bunker in that cluster. So 11 and 12 were Inkbarrow and Bidford and Avon, which I'm sure, as you know, are close in the nearby area. We'd communicate to them to see if they've got the similar results, and if they have, it'd then get reported to Oxford. Because this was a lead bunker, it would have a direct line to the Oxford regional headquarters bunker. And then it's someone's brave job to go above ground, crank the siren, which is remarkably loud. The real one is in this box here. We do have a replica upstairs, so feel free to crank it if you want. And that would alert the public of the amount of threat level there is, and that there's an impending attack about to happen. Different sirens, different noises would signify different events. Just the same as when they release flares and maroons above ground. Like I said, you could control that from below ground. That would show a different level of threat level. For example, it's a white flare, a red flare, a blue flare, mean different things. So someone's got to go above ground and do that, but they've also got to go to the ground zero indicator. So that kind of mounts that anchor that I showed you at the start, next to the hatch, is this device here. Unfortunately, we don't have it on today, but that's what I showed you. Yeah. And this is this kind of biscuit tin looking shape box that sits on top. You've got a small hole at north, south, east and west, that small pinhole, and inside you've got this cassette of papers, north, south, east and west. And what the importance of that is it will measure the flash of the bomb. So when it detonates, it's going to leave that make that bright light. That's going to burn a mark on this paper. And so with that result, you can tell if it's detonated on the ground or detonated above ground in the air. And you can also work out on the grid the elevation and the location, because you can triangulate it with the other bunkers. With the 2 bunkers in that triangle, you can pinpoint the location. This is a great piece of kit. It was reliable. When I say reliable, they did have some problems with it. When it rained, for example, they would go soggy. And when it was really sunny, they would scorch the paper. So you'd have to change them quite regularly. So something they would do in training is, by seeing how quickly you can go up the ladder, change those papers, put the new ones back in the cassette, shut the hatch and come back downstairs. And speaking to other observers, found they were quite competitive about that.
So when they went up to do the siren thing, were they not in danger of
they were
being
Yeah,
kill, basically.
100%. I mean, exactly like we said at the start, they're not here for their safety. A lot of people think, oh, I want to be number one here because I want to be the safest.
Yeah.
It's not the case. They are the eyes and ears of the surrounding area, and they're volunteers doing that. In fact, so when they closed down in September 1991, and they pretty much found out the day before, they didn't feel very good about that because they'd spent a lot of their time doing this, dedicated their time with no safety equipment, very limited safety equipment, and that was it. There were some features they had to protect themselves. For example, this device here, which is called a dosimeter. And what you do is you look through here at bright light, at the sun, for example, or light, and you'd see a gauge on there. And that would say how many rongens has entered your body. And rongens is a measure of radiation. So the higher the level goes, the more you're going to suffer. And if you get to 120 rongens, you will die. So, calling protection, I don't know. I think it tells you the sad truth of what's going to happen to you. And that's what they had. They did also have this copper cable which goes all around the bunker. And that was added later on. In 1968, the Labour government came in and decided to shut half these bunkers down. And some of the money they saved from that, they upgraded some of them. This copper cable goes all the way around and up and out of the bunker. And that's so if there was a blast, that electromagnetic pulse would have neutralised it. But that was added very late. I think it was added 1 or 2 years before it even closed. So they went down here with very limited resources. The water you see on the top there, that's all they had for 3 weeks. If they were to be here for 3 weeks, a jerry can each. And food on the bed from the UK WMO, United Kingdom Warning and Monitoring Organisation. They said it was great food. I don't know about that. It certainly wasn't fresh. It was powdered food, dried food. You can see the menu behind you. So what they'd have, for example, they would have sausage, goulash, carrots for meal A, or meal B, corned beef, bacon grill, mixed vegetables. They did have a small generator in the corner, but when I say small, it really was. And inside there is a chemical toilet, which I don't believe anyone's actually used, because we've never been in that case of needing it. But some would have to actually take that upstairs using the winch cable as well. So I wouldn't want to do that job. Maybe the youngest observer can do that one. And then what we saw above ground, I showed you the fixed survey meter dome, that kind of dome-looking shape. And that is this device here, where you've got the probe inside. And that's where those particles are going to land. On this counter, you will see what sort of threat level you're dealing with and how much there is above ground. I think the most stressful, nervous thing about being down here is you've got that confidence tick constantly going in the background, day and night. But when that stops, you know you've lost touch with the outside world. So you don't want it to stop, of course. But I think the most important factor of this is to remember that the men and women down here were in many ways heroes. And as a young person learning about this over the years, I didn't know about this bunker being here. I didn't know what the people did here. And I think actually it's remarkable, because today if you wanted to get volunteers to do that same thing, I think you struggle to get someone that young to come up here and do that. It was cold, like I said. This is their basic uniform. They weren't actually allowed to bring anything down, but I think they did. They brought speaking to observers, they brought warmer clothes. And they did really enjoy it. I think that was actually the most important. They felt that they were doing something, they felt that they were contributing. So when they shut down, it was quite sad, because they put all this work in and then suddenly it kind of dissipates. They did get a service medal, like you see on this picture here, for 30 years in the Corps, the Royal Observer Corps. And what was that, James? 12, sorry. There you go. 12 years in the Royal Observer Corps, and they still have it today. They wear it with pride, as they should. One of the sad things is when you see these bunkers now, you can see, sometimes you can see them at the top, they've overgrown everything, overgrown, filled with water. A lot of water's come through the communications cables, and also we're lucky here because we've got behind this wall the concrete, and then you've got sandstone and water won't seep through very easily through that. But other bunkers, they have clay and water will come through. And after being closed from 1991 to being opened up, they're not just overgrown, they're chest height with water, even up there. And generally what you see, because I went to Cornwall recently actually, I went to found the bunker, I walked past it and I know that's a bunker. So I recognised it and I went down and all overgrown, nothing in here, graffiti, apart from the bed frames. Because what happened in September 1991 when they closed, they stripped everything and then they left the bed frames here because it's so bulky and they didn't really mean anything. They'd signed the Official Secrecy Act while working down here. So that's a big responsibility in doing that as well. But that is the main kind of features of the bunker. You've got the air vents on the side. They couldn't close that unless they had permission from Oxford, the regional bunker, which seems quite harsh. But mind you, once you close it, you're obviously limiting your oxygen supply.
Yeah.
And you will just build carbon dioxide and start to feel weary and collapse eventually. There wasn't any filtration systems in place. They did develop one, but it was big, it was bulky, it was expensive, and obviously it required a lot of electricity because they didn't use it and didn't put it in place. And there is kind of in that flue, there's levels for the fallout to land on. But obviously, it's going to get in here eventually, and fine particles can get anywhere. So it kind of is a bit insignificant, but it was something. But really, like I said, that marks the end of the tour. If you have any questions, I will try my hardest to answer, can't promise. Dave will be above ground as well. But yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.